Hey, how's it going? Over in London, Quinn, a 12-year-old kid, is hurrying on his way to the subway station where his mom, Karen, happens to work. He's bringing her some really bad news. He completely failed his test and lost out on his scholarship. Karen gets pretty sad, remembering that they just don't have the money to pay for a school. While they're talking, a worker shows up saying that they found a gigantic cavern during some drilling, something that really wasn't supposed to be there at all. Getting curious, Quinn quietly slips away from the conversation and heads down to that mysterious opening hidden just under the tracks. Inside the cave, massive tongues of fire emerge right from the ground and violently shake the walls. Quinn just freezes up in fear as he realizes that there's something absolutely immense hidden in there. Right after that, an unknown creature spits directly in his face. Terrified, he runs straight back to Karen. She goes into a full-blown panic, seeing her son's face all covered in soot, and she tries cleaning his eyes, barely understanding a single thing he's trying to say. Meanwhile, the rest of the workers are starting to realize that something seriously dangerous is coming from inside that cavern. Quinn really should have never gone into the cave in the first place. His childish curiosity was the very thing that woke up the creature and basically started the apocalypse. Without any warning, the station's entire structure begins to shake and a massive jet of fire erupts from out of the tunnels. Karen grabs onto Quinn and pulls him over to the elevator to try and escape. During the ride up, he's trying his best to explain about the monster that he saw. However, that's when the absolute worst happens. A gigantic dragon emerges and completely destroys the elevator shaft. Karen suffers a severe head injury and she dies instantly. That creature was actually just one of many that had escaped from a deep underground sanctuary where they had been lying dormant for centuries. Previously thought of as mythological, it turns out dragons were always real. A very long time ago, they actually destroyed the dinosaurs before they went into a long period of hibernation. Humanity wasn't able to exterminate them at all. On the contrary, the dragons multiplied like crazy and soon they dominated the entire planet. Back in 2010, an attempt was made using nuclear weapons, but that measure only ended up accelerating the fall of civilization. By the year 2020, the Earth was pretty much in ruins. The survivors were now living like it was the Middle Ages, totally deprived of any modern comforts. Even the dragons themselves were now facing a serious food shortage. At this point, Quinn was leading a small group of survivors in an abandoned castle right on the border between England and Scotland. The strategy they had was clear: avoid any and all direct confrontations with the dragons. The members of the group totally trusted Quinn as their leader, but just surviving in a world infested with these creatures was absolutely brutal. With all their food supplies dwindling, the tension was seriously growing. The very first signs of a rebellion were starting to show up among the castle's residents. Ed, who was one of the survivors, starts to gather people who are really unsatisfied with the whole situation. Their plan was to go and harvest the crops way ahead of schedule because their hunger was just becoming unbearable. Quinn finds out and he stops them, warning everyone that if they harvest now, there won't be any seeds left over for the next planting cycle. Ed argues back that if they don't eat something now, they won't even live to see the next season. He reminds Quinn that it's been 2 years since they lost contact with any other groups, and they might just be the last people alive. Quinn's hope just doesn't seem to be enough for them. Even so, he doubles down on his orders. Nobody was to leave the castle, and the car keys were all collected. The tension just keeps rising until Creedy, Quinn's best friend, steps in to intervene. Ed protests, saying that they're living in a community here, not in some kind of prison. Creedy calmly replies that, sure, anyone can leave, but anyone who does leave won't be allowed to come back. After thinking it over for a moment, Ed decides that he's going to stay. Giving them a choice instead of just another order managed to prevent a mutiny by turning the whole situation into a question of loyalty, not of imprisonment. A little later on, Quinn and Creedy put on a little show for the kids in the castle, ending the day with a very special prayer. Instead of being a request to God, this prayer was actually a collection of important rules for surviving any encounters with the dragons. During the night, Ed secretly steals the car keys and quietly wakes up his friend Michael. He tells Michael's wife to just stay silent. A few others also join the group that's now sneaking out of the castle in the stolen car. A short while later, Quinn wakes up to the sound of the wind. Out in the hallway, he finds Lien, a scared little boy, and he calms him down a bit before taking him back to bed to sleep. Meanwhile, Barlow wakes up to the sound of screams because Ed and his group are already out harvesting tomatoes in the fields. All of a sudden, Barlow spots something strange up in the sky and he sounds the alarm, warning absolutely everyone about the imminent danger. As soon as she hears the siren, Michael's wife, completely terrified, decides she has to tell Quinn the truth. Out in the field, Ed sees the dragons attacking with fire and completely destroying his team. In a total panic, he runs to save his own family and finds Michael with his face terribly burned. During their escape, they lose their companion Matt and they end up trapped right in the middle of the burning fields. At the very last second, Quinn and Creedy arrive on the scene to help the group that's in trouble. Devon, Ed's son, is operating the gun mounted on their vehicle. Another dragon suddenly blocks their path and breathes fire, killing the boy instantly. Back at the castle, Quinn decides not to punish Ed because, after all, he had just lost his own son. The situation gets even worse from here. The entire crop was completely destroyed in the attack. While talking with Creedy, Quinn admits that maybe they won't survive until the next year, and he even considers that Ed might have been right all along. Even with all that, he still clings on to the hope of some kind of miracle. The very next day, a man named AJ picks up some voices on the radio and he alerts Barlow. Looking out the window, Barlow sees tanks approaching the castle and he sounds the siren again. All the residents immediately arm themselves. Barlow checks on their ammunition stock, which is almost completely gone. Creedy believes that it's probably just another group of looters. He actually feels a certain bit of relief when he realizes that there are still other humans alive out there. However, as he watches the vehicles come to a stop, his suspicion grows a lot more. The people arriving are Americans, and Creedy considers them to be even worse than the dragons. The group's leader, a guy named Van Zandt, gets out of one of the tanks and demands to speak with the person in charge of the community. Quinn goes to meet him and listens to his story. The group supposedly fixed up a plane and they flew all the way from Kentucky before making a crash landing in Manchester. Now they just need some shelter for one night. It was, of course, obviously a lie. No airplane could possibly cross the dragon-infested ocean. Quinn doesn't believe a single word of it, since the skies have belonged to the dragons for a long time, and so he turns down the request. Van Zandt just ignores the skepticism and introduces himself as a professional dragon slayer. According to him, he's discovered the creature's main weak spot. They can see perfectly well during the day and also at night, but during twilight, they completely lose their focus. To prove his whole theory, he shows off a dragon's tooth as a kind of trophy. Quinn remains pretty suspicious, but he allows the American vehicles to come inside the castle. Creedy shows his serious concern over this decision. He really doesn't trust Van Zandt at all, calling him some kind of crazy marine. Their conversation is suddenly interrupted by the sound of a helicopter. Van Zandt introduces the pilot, a woman named Alex. She explains that her comrades are actually known as archangels because they jump out of helicopters without any parachutes to cast nets over their targets. Most of them don't end up surviving the mission. Creedy thinks the whole thing sounds like some kind of childish game, and he laughs out loud at the idea of capturing a dragon with a simple net, which really bothers Alex. Quinn tells Creedy to go and beef up their security and to send all the children down to the shelter because he still doesn't fully trust these new visitors. During the night, Quinn runs into Alex in the kitchen. Just by chance, she asks about the young boy who is always by his side, thinking that it's his son. Quinn explains that the boy's name is Jared and that he found him in a village when he was only 3, trying to wake up his dead mother. Ever since that day, he's remained right by his side. Alex is genuinely surprised by this because most people would just be thinking about themselves in a situation like that. Quinn then asks her the real reason why they are all there. Alex suggests that he should probably go and talk to Van Zandt about it. At that very moment, Barlow spots the dragon once again approaching in the distance and he activates the alarm. Van Zandt's team responds with absolutely exemplary discipline. Helicopters immediately take off, trucks speed into position, and 3 motorcyclists place flares on the ground to form a sort of triangular trap. Alvarez is the designated archangel for this particular run, and he needs to jump from the helicopter without a parachute to distract the dragon, which is already chasing after the aircraft. Van Zandt gets worried because the third point of the trap hasn't been activated yet. Through his binoculars, Quinn watches the dragon flying right over the castle. The motorcycle meant for the last point tries to get up the hill, but it just can't make it. Meanwhile, AJ is listening in on the conversation between Van Zandt and his men, and he informs Quinn that without that third point, it's going to be completely impossible to locate the dragon. So Quinn gets on his horse and he rides over to the location himself. Over there, he finds the motorcyclist lying on the ground after an accident. He quickly recovers the flare and he activates it just in time to allow Alex to figure out exactly where the dragon is. The creature is flying right behind the helicopter, already in full-on attack mode. Alvarez then leaps into the air, followed closely by two other fighters. Alex is guiding them all over the radio. The dragon starts chasing Alvarez, while the others are trying to throw nets over the creature. The dragon manages to break free pretty quickly and it continues to chase after the fighters. Because of the really dense clouds, their visibility completely disappears. Alvarez only sees the creature when it's already right on top of him. In a split second, the dragon incinerates him with its flames and the Archangel just plummets to the ground. The help with the signal flare was absolutely crucial. Quinn wasn't even part of their plan, but his intervention was the very thing that gave the team a fighting chance to win. From the top of the hill, Quinn radios Van Zandt using one of the motorcyclist's radios. It was now time for Plan B. Quinn, on horseback, needed to lure the dragon over to Van Zandt's position. As the horse gallops down the hill, Van Zandt fires off a missile. Quinn changes direction at the very last second, and the missile strikes the dragon that was chasing him just before it explodes in the castle courtyard. Van Zandt walks up to the dead dragon's head, rips out one of its teeth, and he keeps it as a souvenir. That night, the castle is completely filled with celebration. Everyone is cheering for the victory, but Van Zandt shows up with tears in his eyes. He reminds them that 3 of his soldiers died just to kill that one single dragon. At this kind of pace, the humans are going to be extinct first. Quinn has to agree with Van Zandt, and he attends the funeral for the Archangels. Once again, he asks why the Americans really came all this way. This time, Van Zandt finally decides to tell him the whole truth. He takes Quinn over to Alex, who reveals that they have already eliminated over 200 dragons, and all of them were females. Their research indicated that there was only one single male, the father of all the others. If they could just manage to kill that one male, the rest of the species would die off over time. His hiding place was somewhere in London. Van Zandt crossed the entire ocean with his troops just to achieve this goal, but as soon as he hears the name of the city, Quinn flat out refuses to go. He remembers that another group tried to get to London. They ended up losing 90 people, and they wound up accidentally bringing dragons back to their shelter. This causes a whole new confrontation with Van Zandt, who just walks away completely annoyed. Alex then goes over to Quinn and asks if there's maybe another reason. Quinn confesses that that one specific dragon killed his mother and that it was way bigger than any of the others. Suddenly, AJ shows up, saying that Van Zandt is now recruiting people from the castle for his mission. Some of them are already getting ready to go. Absolutely furious, Quinn goes after Van Zandt and he hits him with a solid punch. The two of them start a really violent fight. Van Zandt reacts brutally and he only stops when his own soldiers manage to restrain him. Alex feels sorry for him and she hands Quinn a bottle of iodine to treat his wounds. Meanwhile, more of the residents are following Van Zandt, including Jared, who secretly gets ready to leave with them. Quinn tries to stop the boy, even promising to make him the lord of the castle, just like he's always dreamed of. But Jared says that now he wants to be an archangel. Van Zandt then departs with his soldiers and a few of the survivors, heading straight for London. Quinn heads out to the fields, looking to gather what little was left of the crops. A short time later, Jared shows up there too. It turns out he changed his mind and decided to stay behind. The awful smell of the dead dragon was already spreading everywhere. Quinn explains that this particular odor actually keeps the other dragons away. That very night, he goes over to the body to confirm the animal's sex. When he sees that it was in fact a female, he finally starts to believe what Van Zandt had told him. When the Americans arrive in London, they find nothing but ruins for miles and miles. The city is just littered with bodies. All of a sudden, a huge explosion of flames comes out of the darkness. Van Zandt immediately orders the attack. The whole group prepares for a massive battle. The dragons can see everything perfectly, but the humans are just firing completely blind. A colossal male dragon emerges from the gloom and it incinerates the entire troop of soldiers. Going to London without any kind of a concrete plan, just with the hope of finding the dragon, turned out to be a really terrible strategy from Van Zandt. Alex becomes desperate as nobody is answering her on the radio. AJ also hears the calls for help and he realizes something horrible must have happened. When Alex finally reaches the location, she finds only Van Zandt and a very few other survivors. Van Zandt, who is barely conscious, tells her that the male dragon was so enormous that it burned them all with just a single fiery attack. Remembering Quinn's words, he now understands that the castle is in grave danger. Quinn is still outside when the dragon arrives, spreading total destruction. Everyone starts running for their lives. By the time he gets back, the castle is already engulfed in flames. He sees the dragon flying away and he starts to scream, trying to find any survivors. Jared appears with a fire extinguisher and starts to put out the flames. Soon, they find Creedy and the three of them begin to get the children down into the basement. When they finally get there, Quinn wants to go back up again to look for the others, but Creedy insists on going in his place. At that exact moment, the dragon attacks once more. The friends don't even have time to say goodbye. Creedy sacrifices himself to save the others, closing the basement door at the very instant the flames get close, stopping the fire from getting inside. Quinn is completely devastated and he thinks about going up to save his friend, but deep down he knows there's nothing more that can be done. He now has to protect the children. They all begin to repeat the special prayer together. A few hours later, Alex and Van Zan return to the now ruined castle and they lead everyone out of the basement. Van Zan finally admits that Quinn was right all along. Even so, he still refuses to give up, gathering all the weapons that were left, and he's surprised to discover that Quinn now wants to fight alongside him. For Quinn, the time for the final battle has finally arrived. Jared is appointed as the new person in charge of the castle. Quinn shares his new plan with Van Zan and Alex. That night, the three of them fly over the river in a helicopter, heading towards the center of London. The city is completely and utterly destroyed. Alex believes that continuing on just means losing more lives. Quinn explains that he actually grew up in London and he knows all the underground tunnels, which could really help them out. Soon enough, dozens of dragons start flying around in circles above them, looking very restless. All of a sudden, a huge male appears and it devours a female dragon right in front of them. The male dragon was apparently so hungry that it had started to feed on others of its own kind. After seeing this, the remaining females all fled, giving the three of them a perfect opportunity to advance. They make their way through the city's tunnels and they arrive at the old subway station, the very same place where Quinn's mother lost her life. The plan now is to lure the male dragon down there and then attack it with explosive arrows. As he steps into the elevator, painful memories start to flood Quinn's mind. Van Zan encourages him to try and turn that pain into pure strength. Filled with a new determination, Quinn gets himself ready. Van Zan instructs them to split up, but just as the dragon appears, Quinn realizes that he somehow lost his arrows. Alex starts to panic and she runs out to distract the dragon, which immediately begins to chase after her. Van Zan fires off an arrow, but the creature just incinerates it in midair. Without even hesitating, Van Zan charges forward and he ends up being swallowed alive by the massive dragon. After Van Zan's death, Quinn and Alex completely abandon the plan to separate. The dragon is definitely wounded, but it starts to hunt them down again. Alex then spots a lost arrow on the ground. Quinn runs to grab it and he prepares to fire. Alex draws the dragon's attention by shooting at it with her gun. While he's loading the arrow, Quinn stares right at the creature. Finally, he has the chance to avenge his mother's death. The dragon opens its massive jaws and Quinn shoots. The arrow hits its target perfectly and the creature just explodes. Months go by and the dragons slowly start to die off. Quinn, Alex and the other survivors all eventually establish radio contact with other resistance groups around the world. Little by little, a whole new life begins to take shape. And that's how Reign of Fire, the 2002 adventure and fantasy movie, comes to an end. And I really hope to see you in the next video.